Hari Om, everybody. Good morning. Let's get started. Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Ana Shrunvannuti Dasadanam Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajinipati Dhinamavrityavat Om Ganeshaya Namaha Om Saraswatyai Namaha Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanno Mitrasham Varunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brahaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva pratyaksham brahma vadishyami Ritam vadishyami Satyam vadishyami Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu mam Avatu vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadram Karne Bhishrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashye Makshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Istushtvagum Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitayatayuhu Swasti na Indro Vruddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishvavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shuklam Baradaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasanna Vadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Vagishadya Sumanasaha Sarvartanam Upakrame Yam Natva Kritakritya Syuhu Tam Namami Gajananam Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam kuru me deva sarvakaryeshu sarvada. Saraswati namastubhyam varade kamarupine vidyarambham karishyami siddhir bhavatu me sada. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Vyasam Vasishtanaptaram Shakte Pautramakalmasham Parasharatmajam Vande Shukatatam Taponidhim Vyasaya Vishnurupaya Vyasarupaya Vishnave Namo Vai Brahmanidaye Vasishtaya Namo Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishna Vande Jagadgurum Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Sadgurum Tam Namami Sadgurum Tam Namami Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Yasya Sannidhi Matrena Sarve Shishyascha Sevakaha Karmakshetre Pravattante Chinmayam Tam Namamyaham Chinmayam Tam Namamyaham Chinmayam Tam Namamyaham. Hari Om everybody. Welcome back. Let's do a quick recap of where we have come so far. We started quite a few weeks ago talking about several aspects of our culture, our Adhyatma Samskriti, our Bhautika Samskriti, about pursuit of happiness and Shreya, Preya, Viveka. Then we went into the three subdivisions of Vedas. Vedas as our source book, Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and their main purpose being for Chitta Shuddhi and Chitta Ekagrata, leading to the knowledge of the self. Then we started learning about our Karma Siddhanta, the basis for reincarnation, types of karma, how to divinize our actions. Then we learned about bhakti, how to divinize our emotions and to make the mind single pointed. Then we started learning about our Gnana Kanda portion of the Vedas, and it is also called as Upanishads, also called as Vedanta. We learnt about Prasthanatrayi, the Shruti Prasthana, the Smruti Prasthana, and the Nyaya Prasthana. We learnt about the story of through the four sample Mahavakyas, leading to the ultimate reality of Brahman. We learnt a little bit about our Dharma Shastra, Manusmruti, Chaturvida Lakshana of Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, and 10 eternal values we learned. We learned a little bit about our Varnashrama Dharma. Then I covered the topic of the Gunatraya Viveka. During that module, when we talked about Varnashrama Dharma, we broadly understood the classification of Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Shudra based on guna and karma, not janma and karma. Then we went into the Panchakosha Viveka. We talked about all the 5 koshas that as though Atman is covered by Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. Right? We went through all that, and then we understood Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheet, which has the gradations of happiness. Then I gave you 2 logic how to transcend that sheet that was called as Atma and Anatma Viveka and Drushya Viveka. Madiyatvena Gnatam Atma Na Bhavati. The Neti Neti approach given by our Upanishad Shastra. And we arrive at what cannot be further negated. Then what we did, we equated that Panchakosha in the last class to the 3 bodies. Gross body or Stula Sharira, subtle body or Sukshma Sharira, causal body or Karana Sharira. And how the food sheet is the Annamaya Kosha. And Pranamaya, Manomaya, and Vijnanamaya being the subtle body, and the causal body being the Anandamaya Kosha, and self is beyond all that. So we have come a long way in our journey, and in summary, what we have done so far is how our divinity is veiled by the 3 gunas, the Tamo Guna, the Rajo Guna, and the Sattva Guna. That was called as Gunatraya Viveka. We learned how to differentiate the 5 layers of the superimposition on oneself. We called it Panchakosha Viveka. Then we learned how to separate the self from transcending the 3 bodies, the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. We called it the Sharira Traya Viveka. Then we explored at the microcosm level, at the individual level, how the same self becomes the waker, dreamer, and the deep sleeper. We covered the topic of the self as the life principle that works through the 3 bodies to become the waker, to become the dreamer, to become the deep sleeper. And that we called it as Avastatraya Viveka. Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti Avastas. So then we looked at this chart. The Jagrad Avastha or the waking state is associated with the gross body or Stula Sharira. And when the individual ego identifies with it, it is called as Vishwa. Then you have the experience of both the internal world sometimes and the external world majority of the times. Then we have the Swapnavastha or the dream state, generally associated with the Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body. And the individual ego associated in this state is called as Taijasa. And you have the internal world created by the mind. Then you have the deep sleep state or the Sushupti Avastha associated with the Karana Sharira or the causal body. And the individual ego associated with the deep sleeper is called as Prajna, where there is absence of the external world and in the internal world. A state of Ajnana Nidra. That is in the microcosmic level. Now, in the macrocosmic level, the same consciousness working through the aggregate of all of the gross bodies put together is called the Virat, the cosmic form of the waker. So in Purusha Suktam, when we say Sahasra Shirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat, that Virata Purusha. And the consciousness working through the aggregate of all of the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle bodies, is called the cosmic form of the dreamer, called Hiranyagarbha. And similarly, the consciousness working through the aggregate of all of the causal bodies, that is a summation of the total vasanas, is called Ishvara, the cosmic form of the deep sleeper. So let's revisit our infamous chart. So what we have done so far, we have covered all of the 5 sheets on the right side, how our Atman, as though covered by the Annamaya Kosha, the Pranamaya Kosha, the Manomaya Kosha, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and the Anandamaya Kosha. From a sheet standpoint, the same as though covered by the gross body, subtle body, the causal body, but which is beyond all that. Then at the microcosmic level, he is known as the individual ego. Associated with Jagrat is Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. And the macrocosmic level, he is called Virata, Hiranyagarbha, and Ishvara. So we have pretty much covered the entire chart on this except Om, Om, that self, which is beyond all these. And that is our topic of discussion for today. Now, since pure consciousness falls beyond the scope of our mental equipment, our mind projects a false interpretation of the reality. We experience the pluralistic world because of this. This, in short, is called Nama Rupa, the names and the forms. This phenomena of projection and identifying, in Vedanta, it is called as Adhyasa or superimposition. Then the causal body arises out of our ignorance, that is Ajnana or Avidya. All these are other superimpositions at the subtle level. And then ahankara, which rises out of that, called the ego. Then I develop these false identification of I and mine, the attitude of me and mine, mamatva, that ahankara gives rise, and then I develop these false notions of doership, that I am the doer, I am the kartru, that is called as kartrutva or doership. And then when I enjoy the results of my action, I become the enjoyer, or that notion is called the bhoktrutva. So our problem is advitiya atma agnanam. And that is why I put this. This is called as the triple A of Vedanta. Adhyasa, because of that avidya, I have developed false identification called ahankara. That is the triple A of Vedanta. That advitiya atma agnanam. Now, what is the solution for that? Then I need to develop that viveka, a firm understanding of my true nature. What we call it as Atma Anatma Vivechanam. Now, Swami Vidyaranya Swami calls this in a text called Panchadashi, speaks of this continuous application of this Atma Anatma Viveka. Avicharo kruto bandha vicharena nivartate. Tasmat jiva paramartanau savadaiva vicharayet. So this bondage is caused by that avichara, absence of inquiry. And Vidyaranya Swamiji says that avidya is destroyed by the vichara. Vicharena nivartate. Hence, one should practice differentiating of the lower self from the higher self. This is called Atma Anatma Vivechanam. Now, in order to know that, we need to know what is that nature of that self. What is that nature of the self? That is the enlivener of the individual self. That is the same substratum of the entire cosmos, Brahmanda, at the individual level, at the microcosmic level. That substratum is called as Atman. And in the case of macrocosm, and that substratum is called as Brahman. So in the last few classes, what we learned is what is not self. We call it Anatma. We learned what were the three bodies, the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. We learned what is the five koshas. What are our three states of existence? All this constitute the not self, anatma. That leads to the question, then what is self? So in Vedanta, the nature of the self is indicated as Sat-chit-ananda, which stands for existence, consciousness, and bliss. In spite of the impossibility of defining the self, Vedanta helps us define the self with the help of this. It says the nature of the self or Atma is Sat Chit Ananda. And we will go through each one of them in this class. Our Puja Gurudev, Swami Chinmaya ji, used to say that these are not definitions per se, but they are indicators. They are pointers to turn the attention towards the self, to show us the direction of the self. Once they have done that, their purpose is fulfilled. He used to say the pointer will never become the pointed. In his inimitable style, he would describe that if I am pointing to the moon, if you keep looking at my finger, you will never see the moon. Your eyes should leave the tip of my finger and travel in the direction of the moon. Then alone you will see the moon, he would say. He would also use the example of the pole vaulter. Just like a pole vaulter that takes that help of the pole to reach the height required to go over, and then what he does, he drops, gives up the pole as he crosses on to the other side. So too, this seeker in his divine pursuit should use these definitions to pole vault their mind from the non-self, from the anatma, to renounce those definitions and transcend on to the other side. So Vedanta says the true nature of that self is Sat-chit-ananda Swarupa, that existence, consciousness, and bliss. So let us take each one of those three terms separately in today's class. Sat. Sat means existence, being, that isness of a thing. Kalatrayepi tishtati iti sat. That's what Vedanta says. What it means is that the one which remains unchanged in all the three periods of time. What are the three periods of time? Past, present, and future. So Sat is that which remains unchanged in all these three periods of time. That means I was there, I am, and I will ever remain. Last week, we talked about gross body, subtle body, and causal body. Let's take one example. Let's see the gross body. We learned how it goes through the 6 modifications. From it is born, then to pranashyati, vinashyati, it dies. Since I always exist according to this definition, this pointer, I am Amara, I am deathless, I am unborn, I am Anadi, beginningless, I am Ananta, I am endless, I am Nitya, I am timeless, beyond time. I am Avikari, means I have no modifications. So when we apply this definition and when you start to think and apply this definition to the 3 bodies, apply this definition to the 5 koshas, do they remain unchanged in all 3 periods of time? Remember, past and present, past and future are with respect to the present. Today, yesterday was yesterday because of today, and tomorrow is tomorrow because of today. So the past and future are called with reference or with respect to the present. That is why we say the present is the present from the Lord. So do the best we can now. That is about the Sat aspect of Atma. Then we go to the Chit aspect, the consciousness. Chit is the nature of absolute knowledge. Jnana Swarupaha. And how do we gain knowledge? Knowledge is generally gained through the thoughts in our mind. Without the thoughts, no knowledge is possible. Thoughts like, this is a book, this is a pen, I am thirsty, I am hungry. All this is possible because of what we call as vritti, the thoughts in our mind. But without me, are these thoughts possible? Therefore, I illumine my thoughts, remaining different from them. That is why the chit aspect, the consciousness, gives that capability of all knowledge that is not only known, that is not only in the realm of known, but also in the realm of unknown. So, what this means is, I not only illumine the presence of thoughts, but also the absence of thoughts. But the self cannot be known as an object of knowledge. It is atindriya vishaya. And we also know that there is no need to illumine the self, as it is of the nature of Nitya Jyoti, as it is of the nature of Swayam Prakasha, self-illuminating. Just like we don't need a torchlight to see the sun. It is Swatasiddha. It is self-evident. So this self-shining principle or ever-shining knowledge principle is called the chit or the consciousness principle, which is my true nature. Then comes the Ananda Swarupa. Atma is Ananda. Sukha Swarupaha. Self is of the nature of absolute happiness with a capital H. A thing is dear to me because it gives me sukham, it gives me joy. I love my car, I love my house, I love my wife, I love my son, I love my daughter when I say that because it gives me joy. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. I love myself the most, unconditionally, totally, eternally. That is why my true nature is never a burden to me. I love others for my sake and I love myself unconditionally. Examine that statement. Because there is sorrow in finitude. There is sorrow in our limitedness, parichinnatva. When you examine the nature, each thing in creation is in a state of agitation, is in a state of flux until it regains its natural state. And Vedanta is saying our natural state, our true nature is that of Sat-chit-ananda Swarupa. Therefore, happiness is never a burden while sorrow is. Remember when we discussed Anandamaya Kosha, I mentioned Priya, Moda, and Pramoda as the Taratamya, as the gradation of happiness that belonged to the Kosha, that belonged to the Anandamaya Kosha. But Atmananda is infinite happiness with no gradations. It's homogeneous. So now we know from our experience that different types of joys are caused by different objects. There is sattvic joy that we experience when we listen to a beautiful spiritual discourse or when we sing a beautiful bhajan. Then there is this rajasic excitement in sensory pursuit and even a tamasic delight in stupor. When we call it ignorance is bliss, ignorance is not bliss. That is Koshananda. It is Ajnana Nidra. Even there is gradation in the joys amongst different beings. The gradation of joy in a single cellular amoeba is not the same that is experienced by a human being. The joys that are mostly subtle, joy, the more subtle it is, the joy is proportionately higher. For example, our Puranas talk about there is different gradation of joys of a Gandharva, a celestial musician, compared to that of a human being. And the celestial beings have different levels of joy. But the existence, consciousness, and bliss are not attributes of the self, because self is beyond names. Self is beyond forms, beyond nama rupa, beyond any qualities, beyond, because it is partless, avayava, niravaya. Therefore, existence is consciousness, and existence, consciousness, is bliss. So we discussed when we said the self, that is the enlivener of the individual self, is the same as the substratum of the entire cosmos. In the case of an individual at the microcosmic level, it is called as Atman, and the macrocosmic level, it is called as Brahman. And then we went towards the definition of the self. So that indicator, that nature of the self is indicated in three ways in Vedanta. The first one is called Swarupa Lakshana. That self is indicated directly. For example, Swarupa means nature, nature of a thing. Lakshana means definition. For example, sugar is described as that which is sweet. So the intrinsic property of sugar is sweet. It is inherent nature of sugar. Just like heat is the inherent nature of fire. So like that, when I'm talking about Swarupa Lakshana, when I say Atma is Nitya, eternal, Atma is Nishkriya, actionless. When I say Atma is Nirakara, without a form. When I say Atma is Nirvikalpa, without any thought modification, I am talking about the Swarupa Lakshana of Atma. Direct indicator. Then you have what is called as Tatastha Lakshana. Atma is indicated using some extrinsic aid. When I say Atma is as the enlivener, that which provides sentiency to the inert conditioning called Upadhi, that which provides sentiency to that Jada Vastu, that which is not the three bodies, that which is not the five koshas, that which is beyond the three states of existence. These are all Tatastha Lakshana, as I am indicating using some external aid. Let's say I am trying to find a person's house. I am close to that house and I ask a bystander as to where Jim's house is. He points to me to that house where that bird is sitting, where that crow is sitting. Or even here, we can say a red Mustang that is on the driveway. That pointer to recognize Jim's house was good for you at that moment to get that direction. But next time, that indicator, that bird or crow may not be there. That Mustang may not be there in the driveway. So these are indicated by a temporary external indicator that is called as Tatastha Lakshana. The same way, when we point out Atma Vishaya using external indicator like that which enlivens that inert matter, that which is a witness of all three states of existence, that Sakshi, that is beyond waking, that is beyond the dream, that is beyond the deep sleep, etc., we are talking about that tatastha lakshana. The next indicator is called atad vyavritti lakshana. Atad vyavritti is by negation of all aspects of what is not. If I need to show Bhagavan Sri Rama, I can say the one who is not Bharata, the one who is not Shatrughna, the one who is not Lakshmana. It is deducted by or deduced by negation of others. Similarly, I can use many descriptors of Atma Lakshana. When I say Atma is Nirakara, without any form, then when I say Stula Sharira or gross body has a form. So Atma is that which is not the gross body. I say Atma is Nirvikara. We know that gross body goes through 6 modifications, Shad Vikara. I say Atma is Nirvikalpa. Without any modifications, then I am negating my subtle body. Then I like that you keep on going backward into feeling of each layer. That is Atad Vyavritti Lakshana. Adi Shankaracharya ji, in one shot, uses all the 3 indicators and defines Atma, Atma Swarupa, that which is beyond gross, subtle, and causal bodies. Stula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharirat, Vyatiriktaha. Then he says, that which is Panchakosha Atita, that which is beyond the 5 sheets, that which is Avastatraya Sakshi, that which is a witness to all 3 states of existence, the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. Beyond that, that is my true nature. That is Sat-chit-ananda Swarupa. So all these pointers have one purpose in Vedanta, is to point the seeker to the self. But one should not be satisfied just by mere verbal explanation, as they are mere word pointers. It should be followed by a good dose, good amount of contemplation. We need to turn that jnana to vijnana, from information to transformation. That is when this self-unfoldment happens. So to cover so far what we have done, we covered all of the 5 sheets as Anatma, and then we went through today to the pointer, to the core of our inner personality called Atma. That which is beyond all the 5 sheets, that which is beyond the 3 states of our existence. All that we covered in today's class. So in this module, we covered through Swarupa Lakshana, we covered through Tatastha Lakshana, we covered it through Atad Vyavritti Lakshana. in terms of the nature of my true self. In the next module, we will talk about Maya and company, and its effects, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. What is the Upadana Karana, the primordial cause of this world, the Nimitta Karana, the efficient cause, the instrumental cause, to name a few topics. That leads us to the symbolism topic for today as to why we ring the bell. Why do we ring the bell at the temple? Is it to wake up the Lord? But the Lord never sleeps. Is it to let the Lord know that we have come to see him? But the Lord already knows. The ringing of the bell produces an auspicious sound, indicating that there should be auspiciousness both within and without. To gain that vision of the Lord, who is of the nature of all auspiciousness. When we say Agamartantu Devanam, Gamanartantu Rakshasam, Kurve Gantaravam Tatra, Devata Hvanalanchanam. I ring this bell to invoke the divinity so that virtuous forces, noble forces enter my home. These virtuous, noble forces enter my heart. And the negativities and the demonic evil forces, let it depart. That is the main purpose of ringing the bell. So let us conclude our today's session. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Asatoma Satkamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. We will see you next week. Same place, same time. Hari Om.